While 10,000 people are dying in the Walmart parking lot fighting over the last case of bottled water, there is a location within 5 miles of where you are sitting right now that has running water, lockable rooms, backup power, a defensible perimeter, and zero human traffic. You have driven past it hundreds of times. You have slowed down near it without ever really seeing it. You have never once considered sleeping there. That ends today. Stop thinking like a consumer. Stop thinking like a refugee. Every instinct you have been conditioned to follow, every survival reflex shaped by decades of zombie films, video games, and prepper YouTube channels, is pointing you toward the wrong buildings. The obvious buildings. The ones that every other panicking human being within 50 miles is also sprinting toward right now. And in the mathematics of collapse, obvious equals contested. Contested equals dead. Here is the brutal truth about temporary shelter strategy that nobody in the survival community will say clearly enough. The first 30 days of a zombie apocalypse are not about finding the best permanent base. They are about surviving long enough, quietly enough, and invisibly enough to have the luxury of finding a permanent base. These are two completely different problems. And the people who confuse them, the people who spend the first 72 hours trying to fortify a Walmart or storm a military installation, are not playing the long game. They are not playing any game. They are already dead, they just haven't stopped moving yet. A temporary camp has one job. One single, non-negotiable function. It buys you time. Time to assess. Time to rest. Time to gather intelligence about your environment without committing to a position that may be compromised, surrounded, or resource depleted within a week. The best temporary camp is not the one with the most supplies. It is the one that nobody else is looking for. It is the one that does not appear on the mental map of a panicking population. It is the one that was specifically designed by the engineers and architects of the old world to be self-contained, isolated, and operationally independent. And that was then promptly ignored by everyone because in a world with electricity and Amazon delivery, nobody needed to think about it. Today we're going to think about it. We're going to rank 10 of these invisible locations from worst to best. We're going to examine exactly why each one works, what survival engineering is already built into it, what specific threat it neutralizes, and what its critical weakness is and how you address it. Because every location on this list has a weakness. There is no perfect camp. There is only the camp that buys you the most time with the least exposure. And by the time we reach number 1, you will understand why the most overlooked building in your county is more valuable than every gun in your collection. Let us begin at the bottom of the list. Location number 10. The Roadside Motel. The Motor Inn. The budget lodging chain sitting on the edge of a two-lane highway between two towns that nobody interesting has ever come from. You know the ones. The parking lot always has 3 cars in it. The sign has been missing 2 letters for a decade. The ice machine hums permanently in the exterior corridor. In the old world, this was the place you stayed when you missed your connecting flight or drove too far before admitting you were tired. In the new world, this is the first genuinely underrated temporary camp on this list, and here is precisely why. The architectural DNA of a roadside motel is almost accidentally survivable. Unlike a hotel, which is one giant connected building with a single lobby choke point, a motel is a collection of individual, externally accessible, separately lockable rooms strung together along an exterior corridor. This segmentation is critical. In survival architecture, the ability to compartmentalize a space is the difference between a contained breach and a total loss. If a zombie, or a raider, or a sick member of your own group compromises room 7, rooms 1 through 6 and 8 through 20 are still independently secure. You do not lose the whole facility. You lose one cell, and you respond accordingly. Each room is a self-contained unit with a solid core door, a deadbolt, a chain lock, and typically a secondary window exit. This means every room has 2 escape routes built in by code. The exterior corridor design means you are never navigating deep internal hallways in the dark. You can see the parking lot from your door. You have immediate visual awareness of the perimeter without leaving your position. In tactical terms, this is called situational awareness by architecture. The location of a roadside motel is its most underappreciated asset. By definition, these properties sit on the edge of things. The edge of town, the edge of a highway, the edge of a county line. They are not in population centers. They are not in commercial districts. They are the transition spaces between places, and in a collapse scenario, everyone is moving toward places, not between them. The human flood will flow toward the city center, toward the big box stores, toward the emergency broadcast signals. The motel on Route 9 between two forgotten towns will see almost none of that traffic. The weakness of the motel is obvious, and you must address it immediately. Glass. The ground floor windows of motel rooms are standard residential glass, single pane, negligible structural integrity against sustained pressure. Your first hours in a motel camp must be spent reinforcing ground floor windows with whatever the property offers. Mattresses dragged from empty rooms and pressed against frames. Dressers pushed flush against glass. Curtain rods stripped and repurposed as bracing. The second floor, if it exists, is significantly more defensible and should be your primary living space. The exterior staircase becomes your drawbridge. Remove the bottom section if you can, or barricade it at night. The motel is not a fortress. It is a way station. Use it like one. Location number 9. The public storage facility. The climate-controlled, orange-branded, fluorescent-lit labyrinth that you rented a 10 by 10 unit in when you moved apartments and never fully cleared out. You are probably paying $45 a month right now for a unit containing a broken exercise bike and your college textbooks. In the apocalypse, that facility is a strategic asset that the majority of survivors will overlook entirely, and for reasons that become dangerous if you are not the one who gets there first. Let us start with what the storage facility is. It is a collection of between 100 and 500 individual steel-doored, padlocked, separately secured compartments inside a fenced property with a single controlled access gate. The perimeter is already built. The individual compartments are already lockable. The facility is specifically designed so that occupants of one unit have zero access to, zero visibility into, and zero awareness of any other unit. This is private by architecture. In survival terms, this is compartmentalized security at industrial scale. The profile of a storage facility is critical. These buildings have no food smell. They have no visible food inventory. There is nothing about the exterior of a public storage facility that communicates resources to a desperate looting population. A Walmart announces itself with signage, with the cultural memory of abundance, with the visual cue of a parking lot full of supplies. A storage facility announces nothing. It looks like the place where people keep old furniture. Raiders performing reconnaissance from a rooftop will look past it. Zombie hordes do not move toward it because there is no biological lure, no cooking smells, no crowd noise, no warmth signature visible from a distance. The individual steel roll-up doors of storage units are more structurally robust than any interior door in a retail building. They are rated for repeated impact and mechanical stress. They lock from the inside with a manual slide bolt in addition to the external padlock. A person inside a storage unit with a barricaded door is in a position that would require significant deliberate effort to breach. The weakness of storage as a camp is threefold. First, ventilation. These units are not designed for human habitation. In summer, an unventilated metal storage unit becomes a convection oven within hours. You must select units with ventilation grating or spend your first priority on creating airflow between adjacent units by removing the shared wall panel, which is typically thin corrugated steel. Second, sanitation. There is no running water on the premises beyond an exterior spigot and possibly a small office restroom. Water management must be your immediate logistical focus. Third, darkness. Once the facility's exterior lights lose grid power, the interior corridors are total blackout. You move with a torch or you do not move. Flashlights, headlamps, and spare batteries are non-negotiable in this environment. But against the strategic advantages of invisibility, segmentation, and existing perimeter infrastructure, these are manageable problems. The storage facility gives you walls and time. That is the transaction. Location number 8. The drive-in movie theater. This one will surprise you, and it should, because it surprised every serious survivalist who thought it through long enough. Let us work through the engineering. A drive-in theater is, at its core, a large, flat, fenced, private property with a single entrance and exit point. The perimeter fence of a drive-in exists specifically to prevent non-paying customers from accessing the facility. which means it was built to keep people out. The entrance gate is a single controlled choke point. A car parked across that entrance creates an immediate barricade. The property itself is a parking field, which means it is flat, unobstructed, and provides clear sight lines in every direction from any elevated position. The projection booth is the asset that most people miss. That booth is a small, reinforced, elevated concrete or brick structure built to house expensive mechanical equipment. It is not glass. It is not drywall. It is built to protect machinery, which means it has structural integrity far exceeding any residential building of similar size. It has electrical infrastructure for the projector and sound system, which means it has conduit that can be adapted for alternative power sources. The roof of the projection booth is your watchtower. From it, you can surveil the entire property and the surrounding approaches. The snack bar building, typically adjacent to the booth, contains a commercial kitchen with food-safe surfaces, storage compartments, and in many older facilities, a propane or natural gas connection for cooking equipment. The combination of a kitchen facility and a defensible central structure on a low-profile, fenced, open perimeter property is more survivable than it has any right to be. The drive-in also solves a problem that almost no other temporary camp location solves: vehicle integration. Your vehicle, the one you use to reach the location, is an asset. In a drive-in, vehicles are the intended occupants of the space. The property is literally designed to accommodate dozens of cars in organized rows. Your group's vehicles can be arranged in a defensive cluster, engines inward, providing both physical barrier material and the psychological comfort of mobility, the knowledge that you can leave. The ability to leave is the single most important psychological factor in preventing the siege mentality that destroys survivor groups from the inside. The weakness is the surface. Asphalt and gravel parking surfaces do not absorb sound. Any vehicle moving across the property at night creates noise detectable from outside the perimeter. You establish noise discipline immediately. No vehicle movement after dark. Foot patrols only. This is manageable. What is not manageable is the speaker infrastructure, rows of in-ground speaker posts that create foot-level obstacles in low visibility. Learn the layout in daylight. Map it before night falls. The drive-in rewards preparation and punishes carelessness. Location number 7. The Golf Course Maintenance Depot. This one requires you to think beyond the manicured fairways and the absurdity of country club culture, and look at what the maintenance infrastructure of a golf course actually contains, because the answer is far more useful than anything in the clubhouse. Every golf course of 18 holes or more maintains a dedicated equipment depot, typically located at the far edge of the property, away from the aesthetics of the course itself. This is where the groundskeeping machinery lives. The riding mowers, the fairway aerators, the sand equipment, the irrigation control systems. This depot is, in functional terms, a rural workshop. It contains mechanical tools, welding equipment in most cases, spare parts inventory, lubricants, fuel storage for the equipment, and in many facilities, a diesel generator for operating the irrigation pumps during dry periods. That generator is what changes the category of this location. Diesel stores far more stably than gasoline. While gasoline degrades into varnish-like sludge within 12 to 18 months without stabilizer, diesel fuel maintains operational viability for significantly longer under proper storage conditions. A golf course depot with a diesel generator and a partial fuel reserve is a temporary power source that most urban survivor groups will exhaust their entire scavenging range looking for, while you found it by driving to the edge of a golf course nobody is thinking about. The irrigation system of a golf course is the second asset that elevates this location dramatically. A working irrigation infrastructure means pipes, pumps, and in most cases a dedicated water reservoir or connection to a well system separate from the municipal grid. Golf courses cannot rely on city water pressure alone for their irrigation demands, which means many maintain independent water access. In a grid-down scenario, this is the difference between having water and not having water. With mechanical competence and the tools present in the depot itself, that irrigation system can be partially adapted for human water supply. The golf course property also provides something rare in suburban environments: agricultural land. The rough areas and the peripheral zones of any course are grassed open land that, with the right seed stock and enough months, can become productive growing space. The same sprinkler infrastructure that kept the greens alive can keep a food crop alive. The weakness of the depot is the same weakness of every facility that depends on fuel. The diesel does not last forever. Once it is gone, the generator is a paperweight and the irrigation pumps go silent. Fuel management and rationing must be a priority from day one. The depot is not a permanent solution. It is a bridge. Use it to buy time. Use that time to find permanence. Location number 6. The highway rest stop. Not the modern, glass and steel welcome center. The old ones. The functional ones. The concrete block facilities on interstates built in the 1970s and 1980s that contain restrooms, vending machine alcoves, a covered picnic area, and a large paved parking area for both passenger vehicles and 18-wheelers. These facilities were designed by highway engineers who were solving the same problem you now have. How do you support human beings in transit through hostile, resource-sparse territory? The structural bones of a highway rest stop are institutional. Cinder block construction, flat or slightly pitched concrete roof, minimal glass, and what glass exists is in the restroom entry vestibules, not load-bearing walls. The building footprint is small, which means the perimeter to defend is manageable and clearable. A small group can physically inspect every corner of the structure in under 5 minutes. There are no hidden interior spaces large enough to conceal a significant threat. The large truck parking area adjacent to the stop is an asset that requires immediate exploitation. A single 18-wheel semi-truck, if any have been abandoned at the location, and many will have been in the first hours of chaos, is one of the most effective movable barricade materials available outside of purpose-built military equipment. Its sheer mass, 40 tons fully loaded, creates a physical barrier that no mob and no horde can move without heavy equipment. 2 trucks positioned across the entrance to the rest stop parking area create a kill corridor and a defensible gate simultaneously. The vending machines present at nearly every rest stop are commonly overlooked as a temporary food resource. These machines are typically resupplied on a weekly cycle, meaning at the moment of collapse, they contain close to a full week's inventory of processed shelf-stable food. Not nutritionally ideal, not sufficient for more than a few days, but caloric insurance in the critical first 72 hours when your group is in no position to safely scavenge. The rest stop's location, set back from the highway by a service road but with immediate highway access, gives you mobility options in multiple directions. You are not committed to a single exit route. This is the property of a way station by design, and that design serves you. The weakness is visibility. Rest stops are marked on every highway map ever printed. Every GPS unit built before the collapse will route toward them under certain conditions, and the physical signage directing traffic to them is irremovable short of structural demolition. The visibility risk is real. Counter it with light discipline. No fires visible from the highway. No vehicle headlights after dark. No noise above the ambient highway sound level. Operate as a ghost on a property that is structurally nearly ideal for what you need. We are now past the midpoint of our list. And I want you to notice something. Every location we have covered so far has been here the entire time. Within driving distance of wherever you are right now. Built, maintained, and mostly ignored by the civilization you lived inside for your entire life. The locations from this point forward become progressively more deliberate in their survivability. They require more specialized knowledge to access and utilize, but they also provide proportionally greater strategic advantage. Pay attention. This is where the list begins to separate the people who survive from the people who nearly survived. Location number 5. The radio or television broadcast tower facility. Every county in America has at least one. Most people have seen them and registered them only as blinking red lights on the horizon at night. Federal Aviation Administration hazard markers on tall steel structures surrounded by small equipment buildings, chain-link fencing, and locked access gates. You never stop to look at what surrounds the tower itself because there was never a reason to. There is now. The facility around a broadcast tower is engineered for one critical operational requirement: the ability to continue functioning without human supervision for extended periods. Broadcast infrastructure cannot go offline every time there is a staffing gap, a storm, or a power disruption. This engineering requirement has produced a class of building that is, accidentally, one of the best designed temporary survival facilities in the American landscape. The equipment building adjacent to a broadcast tower is typically a reinforced concrete or heavy-gauge steel structure, no larger than a two-car garage. Small footprint, extremely robust construction, designed to protect expensive electronic equipment from weather, vandalism, and unauthorized access. The locks on these facilities are heavy-duty commercial grade. The walls are thick. The windows, where they exist at all, are small, high, and barred or grated. You are not fortifying this building when you arrive. It is already fortified. Your job is simply to get inside it. The power infrastructure of a broadcast facility is where the real value lives. Broadcast stations cannot lose power. A single power interruption disrupts the signal and triggers regulatory consequences. For this reason, virtually every broadcast tower facility maintains a dedicated backup generator, typically diesel, on a separate fuel circuit from the grid. Depending on the size of the facility and the local regulatory requirements, that fuel reserve can range from 72 hours to several weeks of autonomous operation. The location of broadcast towers is the property that makes them genuinely exceptional. By regulation, broadcast towers are placed away from dense residential and commercial areas to minimize signal interference and noise complaints. This means they sit in low-density zones, at the edges of industrial areas, on rural hilltops, at the periphery of counties. Low density of surrounding population means low density of threat in the first weeks. No crowd is running toward a blinking red light on a rural hilltop. They are running toward the Costco. Let them run. The weakness is the interior space. These facilities are not designed for human habitation. The equipment building is cramped, dense with electronics, and offers minimal floor space. For a small group of 2 to 4 people, this is workable. For a group of 10, it becomes a social pressure cooker within days. This is a solo or pair survivor camp, not a community base. It is the place you go to stabilize, to recover, to plan, and then you move towards something with more capacity. 48 to 72 hours in a broadcast facility may be the most valuable and most underrated pause in a survival timeline. Location number 4. The Grain Elevator and Rural Agricultural Co-op. This one changes the game, and if you are anywhere within driving distance of America's agricultural interior, it should be near the top of your actual pre-planned location list regardless of where it ranks on mine. A grain elevator is, at its most fundamental, a food storage facility. Concrete or heavy-gauge steel construction. Cylindrical silo towers capable of storing hundreds of thousands of bushels of grain. In the context of a zombie apocalypse, this is a caloric asset of staggering proportions. Grain, corn, wheat, soybeans, sorghum, is shelf-stable in dry storage for years, in some cases decades, under proper conditions. The modern just-in-time inventory model that makes Walmart's shelves go bare in 4 hours does not apply here. An active grain elevator at the end of harvest season may contain enough stored calories to sustain a small community for a period of years. Understand the architecture. The silos themselves are not habitable. They are grain storage vessels, tall, cylindrical, and typically accessible only from the top or through small access hatches at the base. But the elevator complex as a whole includes a central receiving building where grain is weighed, processed, and distributed, and this structure is a multi-floor commercial building with offices, mechanical equipment rooms, loading bays, and in most cases a small break area with water access and basic kitchen facilities. The receiving building is your base. The silos are your pantry. The rural co-op associated with most grain elevators adds a second layer of strategic value. Agricultural co-ops stock the inputs of farming: seed, fertilizer, herbicide, mechanical repair parts, lubricants, basic hand tools, and in many cases fuel storage for farm equipment. The transition from scavenging to producing is the single most important strategic shift a survivor group can make, and the Grain Elevator Co-op is the only temporary camp location on this list that actively supports that transition. You arrive with nothing and leave with the knowledge and materials to grow food. That is an extraordinary asymmetry. The location of grain elevators is, almost by definition, rural, surrounded by farmland, distant from population centers. The grain elevator is a landmark within its local agricultural community, but invisible to the urban and suburban population that makes up the majority of the panicking survivor pool. Raiders know where the Walmart is. Most of them have never driven far enough into the agricultural interior to register the grain elevator as a target. This geographic obscurity is a protective factor that no amount of fortification can manufacture artificially. The weakness is one that this entire category of location shares. You need mechanical and agricultural knowledge to exploit it fully. Raw grain is not food until it is processed. Milling grain without electricity requires equipment and skill. The co-op supplies are valuable only if someone in your group knows what to do with them. This reinforces the cardinal rule of survival that supersedes every location strategy on this list. Your most important preparation is not a place and not a supply cache. It is the knowledge in the minds of the people standing next to you. Location number 3. The National Park Ranger Station. In the hierarchy of overlooked government infrastructure, the Ranger Station may be the single most comprehensively equipped small facility in the country, and almost no one thinks about it in the context of collapse preparedness. Consider what a ranger station is designed to do. It is a self-contained operational hub for law enforcement, emergency response, environmental monitoring, and public services in a remote environment with unreliable access to external support. Rangers operate in areas where backup can take hours or days to arrive. They are trained and equipped accordingly. The station that supports their operations is built with that operational reality in mind. A typical national or state park ranger station contains, at minimum, the following: a communication suite with both electrical and battery backup radio capability, first aid and emergency medical supplies exceeding any retail pharmacy in stock depth, detailed topographic maps of the surrounding terrain in both paper and laminated format, search and rescue equipment including ropes, harnesses, stretchers, and signaling devices, firearms and ammunition maintained for wildlife management. A vehicle garage with basic mechanical tools, emergency food rations stored for extended incident response, and in remote facilities, a water supply system independent of the municipal grid sourced from wells or natural water features. This is not a building someone stocked. This is a building a government agency stocked, according to operational standards, and maintained on a scheduled inspection cycle. The difference between a private prepper cache and a government operational facility is the difference between optimism and professional requirement. The ranger station was prepared whether anyone was paying attention to it or not. The surrounding terrain is the ranger station's greatest strategic asset. By definition, these facilities are located in protected natural areas: forests, mountains, lockshores, river valleys. The natural environment surrounding the station provides hunting, foraging, fresh water, and concealment in quantities that no urban or suburban location can match. The station gives you the tools. The surrounding land gives you the resources. The combination is exceptional. The weakness is access and knowledge. Getting to a remote ranger station requires navigating rural and unpaved roads under collapse conditions. A compromised vehicle, a road blockage, or a fuel shortage can strand you before you arrive. Additionally, the surrounding wilderness, while a resource, also contains threats that demand competence: wildlife, weather, terrain, and the very real risk of becoming geographically lost if your group lacks outdoor navigation skills. The ranger station rewards the prepared and punishes the ignorant with a particular efficiency that the urban environments on this list do not. You must know what you are doing in the woods before you retreat into them. This is not a camp for beginners. It is a camp for the person who has spent years preparing and who understands that the wilderness is a partner you must negotiate with, not an obstacle you override. Location number 2. The train maintenance yard and locomotive depot. This one will require you to reconfigure your mental image of a railway facility, because the popular image, the romantic steam-era roundhouse with a vaulted ceiling, has very little to do with the functional reality of a modern rail maintenance facility. And the functional reality is extraordinary. A train maintenance yard is an industrial facility. Its purpose is to receive, inspect, repair, and return to service multi-ton pieces of heavy mechanical equipment on a continuous operational cycle. To support this function, It contains a workshop infrastructure that surpasses almost any civilian industrial facility in scope. Heavy-gauge metal fabrication equipment, welding stations, hydraulic lifts, machine lathes, metalworking tools, electrical diagnostic equipment, and a parts and materials inventory that includes steel plate, heavy fasteners, cable, wire, and lubricants in industrial quantities. The steel plate alone is worth stopping on for a moment. The ability to cut, weld, and shape steel plate is the ability to manufacture barriers, reinforce structures, create weapons, build agricultural implements, and repair mechanical systems. In the post-collapse world, the person who controls a steel fabrication capability controls one of the most critical industrial processes in the rebuilding of civilization. A train maintenance yard does not just give you a temporary camp. It gives you a manufacturing capability that most survivor groups will not acquire for years. The yard's layout provides a perimeter that is already partially enclosed. Most rail yards are bounded by fencing, berm walls, or the rail infrastructure itself, which creates natural barriers that require significant effort to breach. The locomotive storage tracks provide immediate barricade material. A locomotive weighs between 200 and 400 tons and cannot be moved without electrical or diesel traction power. Locomotives positioned across the primary access points to the yard create physical barriers that effectively no human or vehicle force can breach without purpose-built heavy lifting equipment. This is fortress-grade security built from the existing inventory of the facility. The fuel infrastructure of a rail yard is its most immediate practical asset. Diesel locomotives refuel at the yard. This means diesel storage tanks of significant capacity are present on the property. The same fuel that powers the locomotives powers generators, vehicles, and stationary equipment. Unlike gasoline, diesel at scale in a dedicated storage tank represents weeks or months of operational energy, depending on your group's consumption discipline. The weakness of a train yard is the scale problem in reverse. Unlike the broadcast tower, which is too small for a large group, a train yard is potentially too large for a small one. The perimeter, while partially self-securing through infrastructure, is extensive. A group of fewer than 10 people cannot effectively monitor a large rail yard at all access points simultaneously. You must select the smallest defensible zone within the facility and concentrate your presence there. Do not try to hold the whole yard. Hold the workshop and the fuel storage. Let the rest of the property function as buffer space that you surveil rather than occupy. And now we reach location number 1. The place that was built to survive anything the modern world throws at it. The place that has been operating, largely autonomously, in the background of your daily life since the day you were born. The place that you have never once thought about because you have never needed to. Until now. Location number 1. The surface or underground municipal water treatment plant. Take a moment to understand what this facility actually is, because the name is deceptively mundane. A water treatment plant is a complex industrial facility whose entire engineering purpose is to take raw water from a natural source and transform it into clean, pathogen-free, chemically stabilized water that it then distributes under pressure to an entire population. To do this job reliably, it was built to a standard of infrastructure redundancy and operational autonomy that almost no other civilian facility in America matches. Start with the physical structure. Water treatment facilities are not retail buildings. They are not residential buildings. They are not the cheap sheet metal and glass boxes of the commercial landscape. They are engineered infrastructure, concrete, steel, and earth. The treatment basins are massive reinforced concrete vessels. The processing buildings are heavy industrial construction. Many facilities, particularly those built before the 1990s, have significant below-grade components, underground pumping stations, treatment chambers, and maintenance tunnels that provide inherent protection from both environmental exposure and external threat. Now consider the chemical inventory. A water treatment plant maintains on-site stockpiles of the chemicals required for its treatment processes: chlorine compounds for disinfection, coagulants for particulate removal, pH adjustment chemicals, and fluoride compounds. To a survivor group with basic chemistry knowledge, this chemical inventory is not just a water purification resource. It is the foundation of a sanitation capability that will prevent the 17th century disease cycle that kills more post-collapse survivor groups than any zombie or raider ever will. The ability to reliably produce clean water and basic disinfectant solutions is worth more in sustained survival than any weapons cache of equivalent weight. The power infrastructure of a water treatment plant is what elevates this location above everything else on this list. The municipal water supply cannot be allowed to fail. Hospitals, fire departments, and emergency services depend on it. For this reason, water treatment facilities maintain backup power systems of a category that most other buildings never approach. Large diesel generators with extended fuel reserves. In some facilities, connection to redundant power grid feeds from multiple substations. The capacity to sustain operations through extended power interruptions is not an afterthought in the design of a water treatment plant. It is a fundamental engineering requirement. You arrive at a facility that was specifically built to keep operating when everything else stops. The water itself is the obvious and overwhelming asset. The raw water intake from the facility's source river, reservoir, or aquifer continues to flow regardless of grid status. As long as the processing equipment operates, and with the backup power present, the facility produces potable water continuously. You are not rationing from a finite supply. You are not watching pallets of bottles disappear one by one until zero. You are living next to a machine that makes unlimited clean water from a natural source that the apocalypse cannot turn off. No zombie destroys a river. No raider gang can drain a reservoir. Water, the single resource that kills survivor groups faster than any other deprivation, is not your problem. It is your answer. Now address the location profile. Where are water treatment plants? They are not in commercial districts. They are not near residential centers. By regulatory and engineering necessity, they are located adjacent to their water source, rivers, reservoirs, lakes, which places them at the geographic margins of communities rather than the centers. They are surrounded by utility land, buffer zones, and in many cases, natural terrain that reduces the density of surrounding development. They have heavy perimeter fencing, lockable gate access, and signage that, to the uninformed scavenger, communicates nothing of value. Water treatment does not register as a food cache. It does not register as a weapons depot. It registers as an industrial facility that processes something too technical to bother with. That industrial ambiguity is a protective camouflage that the Walmart can never achieve. The facility also provides something that no other location on this list provides to the same degree: the psychological foundation of sustainability. When your group controls water production, you control the most fundamental negotiating currency in the new world. You do not need to beg, trade, or fight for water. You have water. This reverses the power dynamic of the collapse economy in a way that almost nothing else can. People will come to you, and the terms of their arrival are yours to set. The weakness of the water treatment plant is technical dependency. The facility's greatest asset, its water production capability, requires the treatment equipment to function. And that equipment is complex, specialized, and not self-maintaining. Without someone in your group who understands basic industrial mechanics, chemical treatment processes, and pump maintenance, the facility gradually degrades from a working water plant into a very well-built concrete building next to a river. The operational knowledge required to run even a simplified version of the treatment process is not something you learn by reading a general survival book. It is the kind of knowledge you acquire by deliberately seeking it out before the world ends. If you have heard nothing else I have said today, hear this. Find someone who works in water infrastructure. Learn what they know, or become someone who knows it yourself. That knowledge, in the world we are describing, is the most valuable currency that has ever existed. So we have our 10. The motel, the storage facility, the drive-in theater, the golf course depot, the highway rest stop, the broadcast tower, the grain elevator, the ranger station, the train yard, and the water treatment plant. 10 locations that the panicking population will run past without seeing. 10 locations that the architecture of the old world accidentally optimized for survival. 10 locations that buy you the thing you need most in the first 30 days, time. But I want to leave you with something more than a list. Because a list without a framework is just trivia, and trivia does not save lives. The framework that underlies every single location on this ranking is one principle stated plainly. Invisibility is the new security. In the old world, security was about strength. Thick walls, heavy doors, armed guards. The biggest, loudest, most fortified presence was the safest position. In the new world, that equation inverts completely. The strongest-looking positions, the military bases, the big box stores, the sports arenas, become the most contested positions. They attract exactly the volume and quality of threat that their fortifications were designed to repel. They become the most dangerous places to be precisely because they look like the safest. The locations on this list win not because they are stronger than Walmart. They win because nobody is looking for them. They win because they do not announce themselves. They win because they were designed for functional purposes that have nothing to do with consumer culture. And in a world where consumer culture has evaporated overnight, that functional purpose becomes an invisible strategic advantage that the panicking majority cannot see and therefore cannot contest. Every location on this list buys you the same thing, 30 days. Maybe 60. Maybe 90 if your group is disciplined and your threat environment is low. That is what a temporary camp is for. It is not forever. It is long enough. Long enough to stop reacting and start thinking. Long enough to assess which members of your group have the skills you need and which have the dependencies you cannot carry. Long enough to gather intelligence about what the surrounding region looks like, where the other survivor communities are forming, what resources remain viable within your operational range. Long enough to make the most important decision of your survival timeline, where you go permanently. Because here is the truth that we never say loudly enough in the survival community. The location does not save you. The location buys you time. What saves you is what you do with the time. The group that wastes 30 days in a water treatment plant arguing about leadership and hoarding resources will die just as surely as the group that wasted 30 days in a Walmart. And the group that spends 30 days in a roadside motel thinking clearly, moving quietly, building trust, distributing roles, and planning deliberately will arrive at their permanent position stronger than any group that rushed directly toward the obvious answer. You're not looking for a vault. You're looking for a pause. A moment in the chaos where the noise drops enough that you can think. Where you can sleep, even briefly, without one eye open. Where you can look at the faces of the people around you and begin to understand who they actually are under pressure, because that is the only version of a person that matters in the world we are describing. The zombie apocalypse has always been a metaphor. It has always been a stand-in for the real collapses, the grid failure, the pandemic, the supply chain catastrophe, the slow unraveling of the systems we built our lives inside without ever questioning their durability. And in every real version of collapse, the same pattern emerges. The people who survive the first phase are not the strongest or the best armed. They are the ones who stayed invisible long enough to let the initial chaos burn itself out. They are the ones who found the quiet places, the functional places, the places the panicking crowd ran past without seeing. The world outside the window you are staring through right now is full of those places. They have always been there. They were there before you were born, and they will be there after the emergency broadcast system goes silent and the cell towers go dark. You just need to know what you are looking at. Start looking.